Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. O Lord, my strength, O Lord, my Redeemer. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. So for this session, these are the objectives that we have structured based on your discussions and based on that you have sent in the pre-sessions. So we need to first recapitulate our own awareness about our role as teachers. At the end of the session, we will do that. Recapitulate about the characteristics of our potential learners. Recapitulate our own faith. Identify our resources to face the challenges that we have been sharing. Cash on the and cash on them. Then recapitulate the principles of effective education. Identify a few practical tips. Identify a few methods to keep the parents in the loop. So this is what we will be achieving in the next few minutes. So goal of any education is expansion of the consciousness of the learners. So I've been listening to all that you have been presenting. It has come through in your discussions. All of us are concerned. So spirituality, what does it mean? How do we do this expansion of consciousness of our learners? In other words, it is creating awareness among the learners about the nature of our existence. Each of us are spiritual beings. So getting our students to become aware of their spiritual existence is one of the ways in which we expand their consciousness. Getting them to be aware of their potentials and possibilities. Very often, they're not aware what the human potential is. So helping them to be aware of the human potentials and what are the possibilities from those potentials. Equally important is to balance it with helping them to be aware of our limitations and what support systems we have for our limitations. These same principles are important all the more in Sunday school. In any education, this is important. Sunday school also, this is very important. Now, let us take some time to be mindful of ourselves, what we are, how we are as teachers. All of us have teaching styles picked up from our parents or our teachers. This is one thing we need to remember. Whatever we are doing, we have picked up from somebody. We were not born with them. We learn to do some things the way we are doing. And all these methodologies are as old as we are, and they may be as old as our parents or teachers are, because we have copied it from them. So it has been handed down methodologies that all of us use. Some of us may have put in efforts to check on ourselves, correct ourselves, or make changes in our practices. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. This getting ready is to help us to consciously do that. All of us need to be aware that we are using the latest technology here, the online digital platform, to teach about an ancient practice, ancient church and its practices. When you listen to that, it's a contradiction. There is a contradiction in that. We need to be aware of that. This is not something bad or wrong or anything, but awareness of this contradiction is very important for us. For that same reason, we all need to be willing to do self-examination, update ourselves in terms of our times and places. So all our group discussions have been meant for that, and I'm very happy that you all brought into the discussion your thoughts, and that was a kind of updating actually. Same, we'll just run through the awareness about our learners. The learners also have styles and habits picked up from their parents. We need to remember this. When we become teachers, we sometimes forget that the learners have also picked up their styles and habits. And they have picked it up from their parents or any of their previous teachers or any place. And this picking up happens very early in life. It is not something that happens late in our life. In fact, learning from others, the habits and the practices that we have, we actually learn before 7 years of age. And we start teaching Sunday school sometimes close to that age or even later. So they already have fixed learning when we get them as students. So this is something we need to keep in mind. What is happening to my, okay. They may or may not have exposure to the church. We are all very aware of it. This came up frequently in our discussion also. They may or may not have exposure to church. That's something we need to be very mindful. The other thing is, they are all younger than us. It's something which we often, we know, but when we teach them, we forget this. They're very young. And we forget how we were when we were young. We need to be very aware of that. How was I? How were we when we were in this age? What was our thoughts? What is that we wanted? Now it's very easy to find fault with how our students behave. But how were we when I was in 4th standard, when I was in 12th standard? Did I really love to be in the Sunday school? We need to be aware of it. We get in touch with that. And we can be very sure that they all have exposure to secular environment in schools, especially in the online forum, other Christian churches, other beliefs, other religions, atheism, scientific inquiry. So it is much more than most of us experienced when we were in those ages. This is something which we need to be very mindful of. Some more, they may have very little exposure to regular church worship. They may not have attended Sunday school earlier at all. They may or may not have liked Sunday school. In this process, when I was getting ready for this, I asked my own children, what are your memories about your Sunday school? It was one of the most boring experiences in life. That's a reply I got from my own children. They may be joining online because their parents insist. They cannot help being online because parents have done the registration and they want them to learn. And the parents want them to learn about the church. Most of them may be coming for that. They may have attended other church Sunday schools. There's another challenge. They may have already had a lot of ideas about how Sunday school should be, what should be taught in Sunday school. And we need to be mindful about what we are teaching and what they have experienced too. All of them may not have all these characteristics, but it's a mix of group that we are going to get. And in every class, all these characteristics may be there, at least in one student. So what is common for all of us? Actually, this picture is very invigorating for me and very stimulating for me. I learned my Sunday school at Devalogam. So when I see this picture, it's very pleasant memories that come to my mind. This is our ancestry is what is connecting us. Something that is common for all of us. Our affiliation to the Orthodox Church. And I have specifically used the word familial affiliation because the students personally don't feel the affiliation most of the time. It's because the families are affiliated that they come. So that is something which we need to be very mindful, but this is something that we can bang on. These are the two aspects which brings us together to take up this challenge. So in that context, when you were presenting in the group, I heard somebody say, what is the essence of Sunday school? I think it was group through. That's one thing to keep in our mind. I think it is group 3 who shared. At the end of the day, we need to be very clear that what is the essential message that Sunday school needs to get across to the child. So being an Orthodox Sunday school, we need to be able to summarize Orthodoxy in a few points. There is a lot of things that we teach. We have 12 classes of Sunday school and a lot of material to be taught technically. But ultimately, what is that we want our students to get? If that is very clear to us, we will be able to do this very well. Faith in a loving God expressed through the Trinity. And the loving God is most well expressed in the gospel through the story of the Father. We actually very mistakenly refer to that story as the story of the prodigal son. Actually, it is not the story of the prodigal son. There is a son in that, but it is actually the loving Father that is being, Jesus is trying to tell us about the loving Father, not about the prodigal son. We forget when we teach that story that it is about the love of the Father. So this is something that needs to be very powerful in our mind. Worship of the Trinity. And the love in the Trinity. All our Sunday school books teach us about that. For me, my personal memory about the worship of the Trinity and the love in the Trinity is come from the memories of Givargis Marosatius Tirumeni. If he is given only 1 minute to speak, he will only say about that. Why do we worship Trinity? Worshipping Trinity is an expression of God's love. It's the best expression of God's love. That is why we know God as Trinity. A church that is eternal. This is again a confusion for a lot of our students. I heard you express how children exposed to other belief systems bring up their trouble. I have used the word saints, living, departed, and yet to come. I haven't used people. We are all saints. In Christ, we are all saints. And these saints are not just the church fathers or whom we call saint somebody. We are all called to be saints. That is the essence of Orthodoxy. And those saints are not people who lived in the past and have made a picture and put on the wall. They are also part of it. The living saints, present days, whatever we are, and the saints to come. So this message has to get across to our students at some point in our classes. God's love and mercy for the whole creation. God's love and mercy is not just for Christians. It's not just for Orthodox. It's for the whole creation. That is the essence of Orthodoxy. So if we are able to take across these few messages to our children through our Sunday school, and this is at the back of our mind, whatever we teach, we will be able to deal our difficulties, whatever problems we face, we will be able to deal with them. Now, how do we translate this Orthodoxy in the life of our church? Liturgical life is the most important thing that Orthodoxy teaches. And liturgy includes not just our Kurbana, it also includes our everyday prayers, the book prayers that we use. I remember when I was a young child, I had faced so much challenges from my colleagues, my friends, who said, why do you read from a book in prayer? Shouldn't you recite it from your heart? So after some time, I used to ask people, even those extempore prayers we recite, aren't they learned sentences? So this book-based prayer is a resource for us. We need to know the strength of it, why we need to have it. Isn't it helping us to be together, worshipping together? You go to anywhere in the world, we come together, we all know what we are going to sing together, what we are going to pray together. So at least the least minimum of it, our students should get across. And I also want to add about the liturgy after liturgy. This is our Sunday school books teach us about it. I learned this usage from Paulus Mar Gregorius Tirumeni. Liturgy after liturgy. Tirumeni's book on joy of freedom. Swadandriya Deepti is the Malayalam word for it. His thinking on and his experience on Holy Kurbana, he comes out in that book. And that is all to be lived after the liturgy. So we go to the church, we sing our songs, we pray, but then what do we do after that? How do we live it out in our lives? When we look at ourselves, we sitting here and teaching Sunday school is part of our living after liturgy. But for our children, that's not enough. They need to see in us what we teach. I also heard that being shared here by one of the group. How can we be personal models? And this is going to be a challenge in the online thing. How will we overcome that? We need to be ready to share verbally our experiences appropriately in our spiritual life. What is given in the book, anybody can read. But sharing our experiences, only we can give. Only teachers can do that. The student can read and understand what is given in the book. How do we connect our experiences? How do we practice liturgy after liturgy? Has to be shared to our children at some point. And that is actually the invitation to grow in the image of Christ. The invitation to grow in, we all sing this song in our worship. All our Kurbana, every Namaskaram we sing this song. Essence of the Orthodoxy teaching. Tan samyam nam poondiduvan, nammuda samyam avan poondu. Namme tan pidrasudaraki, pavana ruhayodu cherpan. So being in the Orthodox Church is learning to be like Christ, to live in the image of Christ. So that message has to get across. How do we do that? We need to think of that. That is possible only through God's mercy. Total dependence. We are planning, we are conducting a training session. That is all good. That is all the intelligent aspect of it. But ultimately, after all this discussion, we need to be totally dependent on God's mercy to do it and be mindful of it, conscious of it in every effort that we practice. The other important thing is our traditions and practices. I heard a lot of challenges and questions being raised here already about traditions and practices. How children ask questions about traditions and practices. We need to understand what is the meaning of our traditions, and we need to be able to explain to our students our traditions in a relevant way, in whichever community, in whichever culture they are living. So we need to understand what our traditions are. Essentially, all our traditions have originated from the Jewish origins of the church. We need to know that. And that is what Orthodoxy is about. We have all these traditions. We didn't build up one day in one time of the church. It's a historical thing. When Jesus left his followers here, there was already a Jewish practices going on. It's those practices which have been carried on. So the roots are there in the Jewish practices. And so it's very good if some of us can take time to understand what was the Jewish root of some of those practices. And all those ancient practices have some reason, some benefit, some advantage attached to it. So when there is a question, this will help us to answer those questions from children. Some of our traditions are local cultural adaptations. Why that is important? Why do we do that? And that is not faith. We need to be very clear about that. Traditions has nothing to do with faith. Traditions are, why do we have traditions? We need to know. The need for traditions is traditions form a structure for personal discipline and personal growth. Traditions is not what gives us salvation. Tradition is not what makes us the Christian. It is their practices. So which we need to be very clear and be able to differentiate that to our students. And what is the role of traditions in the church? The church is the organ in the world. It's a spiritual organization, but it is existing in the world. So when I say that, I'm reminded of our Lord's teaching in St. John Gospel, chapter 17. To live in the world, but not of the world. So that's something very important. So to live in the world, we need traditions, but we are not of the world. That must be very clear. So how are we going to face all these challenges? In my thinking, I'm telling you, openness to the learner's experiences and being non-judgmental is very important. Like in the beginning, when we recollect about ourselves, We all have learned from our parents and or our teachers. When I say our parents, it's not just our own biological parent. Any parental figures, those have influenced us. So there may be many things we have copied, good and bad, whoever we were influenced by. Some of them may be judgmental. So we also have learned to be judgmental. We also may have learned to find faults with our children, find, find problems with our children. I'm not saying there are no problems or there are no faults, but it's easier to find fault than being non-judgmental, being judgmental about whatever they do. God doesn't judge us. So we actually have no business to judge them. We need to be mindful of them. That is also openness. That is what I mean by openness. The deep and our own deep understanding of our faith, our own connection to our faith. That's why I just put them in essence, not the details of the tradition or not the details of the practices. The essence must always be there in our mind. That's very important. And conviction about the value and purpose of traditions. The conviction, why it is being done, what is the value. Only then we are able to transmit it to our students. Again, conviction about our goal. Every day we may have an objective to teach according to the class topic we have, but our goal is something different, the larger goal, like we discussed earlier, like it came from your group. The larger goal is that our children should know God, be able to live a spiritual life, and be in touch with our church and our faith and traditions, and be able to connect to that. So whatever we need to do for that must be our ultimate aim, not the everyday content of the lesson, whether they learn all the content word by word. They are all important though, but the ultimate aim should always be there in our mind. This is why I am doing this. Again, this is possible only through complete trust in the merciful God and enjoying the work we do. I was very happy to hear one of you sharing how you enjoy being with your students. At least that is the crux to it. There may be a lot of problems, there may be a lot of difficulties, but whether you enjoy the process of teaching, your students would love it when you are enjoying what you're doing. They'll see it on your face. Language is not what we use in words. The communication sciences say that our words give only 7%. 93% of what we communicate comes through our body language. And our body will show it when we enjoy it. And that's all enough. When you enjoy what you're doing, your students will enjoy your classes and you will be able to face the challenges. Just putting together some effective education principles. These are all things which you all have been practicing. It has come up in the group discussion. I'm just putting them together here. Creating pleasant and safe learning environment. This is very, very important. Often we hear that they close the video, they don't listen, they don't want to listen, they do multitasking. They are all problems. That is because the process is not pleasant. They don't feel motivated to be in the process. So what do we do to make our sessions pleasant, acceptable, something which the children want to be in? Like when the online Sunday school closes and when they go, they should feel like, oh my God, I want a little more of it. How can we give that kind of an experience to our students? That is what we need to think about. What I meant by safe learning environment is not being judgmental of them. Safety is about not being judgmental. If coming to the Sunday school, they are going to listen to all their faults and mistakes and what they are not doing from our mouth, they would never want to be there. We need to know all those things. We need to address all those issues, but it's not by telling them all that. That's how we make it safe for them. They should feel safe to come and sit in our class. When I say this, we need to think of how Mary Magdalene felt safe in the presence of the Lord. It's something like that. She felt safe because she was not blamed. When the whole community was blaming her, Jesus never blamed her. So can we be teachers like that? Not blaming our students, but being aware of their need. That's what Jesus did. How can we model Jesus in being teachers? Not blaming, but knowing what their need is. That is safe learning environment. I heard many of you share this. I am so happy it came from all of you. Learner involvement. This is the key to any effective learning, especially online. They cannot switch off the video. They cannot not be there if they have things to do. I think it's Lena Johnny who was speaking the same thing as I came to your group. I heard Lena Johnny say the same thing. How she keeps the group engaged. How the children have to do everything. And then what is your role? This is a question that many senior teachers ask. Like, so I'm today actually trying to model that for you. 1 hour session, Thomas was designed for this. But we have spent half an hour discussing among yourselves. That is a kind of activity that I would like you to do with your students. And the last few minutes, when I was going through your pre-session survey, I read somewhere that children have only 30 to 40 minutes of attention span. Children don't have even 30 minutes. 5 minutes if you get, excellent. And forget about children. Think of us. How many of us can suffer more than 20 minutes? How many of us switch off our own videos when we listen to something for more than 20 minutes? So I was telling Thomas, I don't want to speak much here. Just bringing in a few points. We need to be just mindful of these things. How will we get the learners involved? When you plan your lessons, when you plan your sessions, have 45 minutes of things for them to do. Let them do. Let them read. Let them sing. Let them share. Let them discuss. Let them teach each other. Let them tell what they learned. That's more important than our reading from the textbook. And you can tell the parents to help them with the textbook. And when they write the exam, they'll have questions from the textbook. You don't need to teach all that. They can read and learn all that. And encourage them to ask questions. Give them a reading portion and tell them to come with questions from that portion. So the next class, again, they have to ask questions. If in your class you ask questions, I don't think anybody would like to answer. Just imagine if I start asking you questions in the session, how many of you would feel like answering? I'm sure hardly anybody. The same with our students. Rather, give them the opportunity to ask questions. That's what I did through making you discuss in the group discussion. This is again another very important point in making learning effective. They need to know why they need to learn Sunday school. This is a question I have faced from my children. I have faced from a lot of people. I'm already going to school. I have to do that. I have to do this. Why should I sit in Sunday school? What am I going to gain from Sunday school? We should be very clear about that. And it's not in verbalizing that they are going to get that message. When your Sunday school becoming enjoyable, they won't ask this question because that enjoyment, that personal growth experience gives them the answer why Sunday school is important. So we must learn to organize our sessions like that. Another important point is integrative approach. Integrative approach, what I mean is each of our students have something, they are all made in God's image. They are all God's creation. They all have in them the spiritual core. Help them to find that out. Help them to bring that out. Talk that out. It may not be perfect. It may not be the best thing that you will listen to. It may not be anything to do with the theory and the theology of the church. But what is that they think? Rather than we talking a lot to them, we should help them to talk what they think of the church. And we should be able to patiently listen to them. We need to develop listening skills and being not judgmental. And at the same time, very important, we need to have the skills to deliver more information, unpleasant feedbacks. Children may not be doing everything in the best way or the perfect way. It's very easy to say they are not doing well, they are not doing well. They are not doing well. What is our role? How can you get them to do the right thing? That skill we need. I'm sorry. Most of these things that we have been saying is part of those skill only. And in my thinking, the most important is not being judgmental. Children feeling safe to come to your class, safe to tell you even what they think, even their blunders, even their mistaken notions, feeling safe to tell it to you, and knowing that they will not be judged for that. That is safety. And then you are actually giving them the messages in the right way. When we are judgmental, we don't have the skills to deliver, especially difficult messages, in an acceptable way. And one of the principles in communication that we teach is get ready for them, get ready them to listen to what we have to say. When you want to give them a feedback, can we spend a moment asking them, can I tell you something? Especially children growing in the Western community, this is very, very important. That is what they experience in all the schools. That is what they experience in their daycare centers. Their teachers talk to them like that. And we are all, most of us teachers have grown up in India, grown up in the Kerala culture. We never have that culture. Asking somebody, shall I tell you something? And in a very respectful way. So we need to practice that as teachers. If you have to give them a feedback, if you have to tell them that something they did is wrong or bad or something, call them by name and ask them, Thomas, Peter, Simon, can I tell you something? I want to tell you something. And if it is very embarrassing, please don't tell it in the class. You have to personally tell them. I would like to talk to you personally. Would you like to come to me? And he needs to be willing to come to us. And that is the skill to deliver unpleasant messages. Some practical tips on the same ideas, how we practically deliver. We have been discussing in between, just putting them again together. Create as many opportunities as possible for students to speak in the class. As much time they speak, the more they speak, the better. But it's also very important that when you let them speak, you need to know how to make them not dominate the class. The class is yours. They can speak, give them opportunity, but you must be able to navigate in such a way that somebody doesn't dominate and the student doesn't dominate the teacher also. That's a very important skill that we need to have. Learner involvement. It's not just in speaking, drawing, singing, discussing. You can do anything you want. And with the present online digital technology, it is not actually so limiting. You keep the camera on and create a space for this. You can do many things. I heard one of the teachers saying, I'm worried, how will I dance with my kids? You can dance online. I recently attended a workshop where the presenter and all of us were dancing together in the presentation. We can do that. We need to go beyond our known practices. We need to think differently of methods by which you can keep your children as much involved in this little 1 hour you have. And opportunity to ask questions. So you can create opportunity. You tell them to ask questions. They may not ask questions. They may not want to sit in the class at all. But like I gave one example, you give them a story or a portion or a homework, something to do, something which may be interesting, and come with a question from that. So the next class, they'll come with questions. Create opportunities to ask questions. And the safety and the freedom to express their understanding. Verbal appreciation, very, very important. This is something which is not in our training. We may be appreciating them, but we don't directly tell them. It's very, very important for every child to hear this. Now let us look at ourselves. Don't we like when we are told that what we did something is very nice? I'm sure all of us would love to hear that. I would love to hear that. So even the smallest good thing and the smallest nice thing that you saw, very little, it may not be very significant. Start building on that. Your children would love to come in your class. Your children would love to listen to your class. Verbally, you have to say. See, we have 3 important modes of learning: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Visual is by seeing. Your videos will appeal the visual. Your saying is what appeals the verbal. Some children may be more visual, some children may be more verbal. So it's very important that we need to practice saying our appreciation. And when it reflects on our face, it will become visual also. So that's very important. And kinesthetic is what I meant when I said about the learner involvement, drawing, discussing, writing, actually doing, working with hands. That's a very important method of learning for a lot of students. They may not talk anything, they may not say anything, they may not be impressed by videos, but they would like to work with their hands. So we need to address and have something of everything of this little by little in our sessions. Some visual, some auditory, some working, some singing should be there in all our sessions. Again, to make it very effective within 1 hour, if the portion is given to us, from the essence of that portion, you need to create minimum objectives for that class. There may be a lot of things that can be taught, but at the end of the class, 1 or 2 things that you want your students to take home must be very clear in your mind, and that must be in your mind when you do the class. And then you will be able to achieve it if you have just 1 or 2 objectives. If you keep too many objectives, it will be difficult to achieve. That is connected to mindfulness of our larger goal. That's why 1 or 2 objectives. And always remember to connect our teaching with their previous experience or existing knowledge. So when you make them talk, when you make them discuss, that's the purpose. And whatever we are going to teach that day must be connected to what they say or what they already know. How do we keep, especially in the online and especially with the little kids, we know the parents are going to be there. Appreciating their initiative and interest is very important to keep them in the loop. Again, just like children like to hear appreciation, all of us have a child in us. That's why Jesus said, turn around and be like babies. Turn around and be like babies. We all have a child in us. We all would like to hear appreciation. The parents also would like to hear appreciation for their initiative and interest. We have to do it. We have to say it with our words. And very specifically acknowledge their presence when they are there. We need to somehow get awareness about what their expectations are. We need to be in touch with them, communicate with them. I don't know how the structure of the sessions will be helping you to do it, but I can see that already Thomas has built-in plans for all these kind of interactions with parents. So use those opportunities for all that. Again, being not critical, even to the parents, is very important. Being not judgmental to their own gaps. Many of them may not have gone to Sunday school. Many of them may not be believing in all these things. For a discipline's sake, they may be bringing their children to the Sunday school. Situations may be variety, but let's be open to them. They have come. That is the most important thing. Whatever their background is, they are with us now. Let's appreciate, let us celebrate that. And gently, if you are capable, if they are willing, initiating and dialoguing with them on topics. If they like it, and if they didn't have the opportunity to learn, this will be helpful for them also. And exploring with them rather than giving them instructions on how to embellish their students' learning experiences. You can ask them, discuss with them. How do you think you can help? We need to learn to practice that. Rather than tell them, you do like this, you do like this. That are all instructions. Nobody would like to receive instructions. So keep it very interactive. This is too much, I think. I had prepared. You have any questions, any comments, you could tell at this time. Anyone who feels free, please raise your questions or comments.
Ma'am, can you exit out of the presentation so that you could see?
Yeah.
So anybody would like to ask questions? Please raise your hands.
Any differences of opinion? Any thoughts that comes to your mind, please feel free to share.
Ma'am, this is Sonia Rani from Kollam. Ma'am, this is just a comment. I felt the presentation was very crisp and to the point. It was really like I was feeling so happy to be a part of this as I was listening to the points. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you just made a point during your discussion that when you ask questions, how will it feel? Now, actually, we are feeling that. So we know when we ask questions to children, how is it to feel?
Exactly. I'm happy you brought it up.
You gave a taste. You gave a taste of what it is.
Thomas, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just raise your hands and go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, what one thing I always felt is in online Sunday school, since these children are away from the church, the physical church, then how do these people practice what we are teaching them? They will not get an opportunity to attend Prabhana, they will not get an opportunity to attend any of the rituals, any of the sacraments. But but we will not be able to give Jesus Christ to them through the online class. Only knowledge can be given.
Yeah, that's a very important question that you're raising, and that is the whole purpose of this session that we have had. And so we are at least doing this. If we didn't have this, they are not even getting this. So we are trying to do something. എന്താണ് നമ്മൾ മലയാളത്തിൽ ഒരു ചൊല്ലുണ്ടല്ലോ, what is that പഴഞ്ചൊല്ല് we have about this? എന്തെങ്കിലും കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ, something. You are talking about the ideal which we should be giving Holy Kurbana. That is what we are bringing it towards. But it doesn't happen all of a sudden. We are creating an interest. We are generating an interest. And we are telling them how they can do it. That is why it's so very important that the essence of our sessions need to be very crisp. We need to be very clear, this is what we are trying to do. We are not trying to we are not expecting, or we are not trying to bring all of them to church the next day. That's not our purpose. We are doing something to keep them in the loop, keep them in the track, and give them the opportunity, give them the possibility that this is there. Seek out. So that has to be very clear in our mind. That's my thinking. Please feel free to speak, whatever you want to speak.
Thomas,
no judgment here.
Hello, ma'am. Just one point I would like to make. During the sessions and one of the group sessions, I had a point that the senior students have logical questions that need to be answered. That they are. So, and the teachers find it difficult to answer those questions. Thing is, in today's world, I think the teachers should be able to answer those questions, because that's how we need to understand the church's stance on those questions, and how can they find Christ through the answers in those questions. That's the motive of the Sunday school teacher, and we should be able to answer those questions. If we keep mum on those questions, the students will keep pondering on those questions. They will lose confidence in the teachers on a long run.
Yeah, I have something very specific to respond to that question that you raised. It's very right that you said that the teachers should have conviction. Teachers should know the answers. But it's not very important that you have to give them answers, especially 18-year-old, 17-year-old teenagers. It's very important you help them to find the answers rather than you tell them the answers. That is the solution to those logical questions. Because when you share your convictions, it goes on like instructions. Whereas you ask them, if they ask you a difficult question, you must have the habit of asking a question back, inviting them to think of it, and also be accepting of their questions. Like, for example, let's take church politics. Why should the church have so much politics? Why should there be a case? Yeah, that's an interesting thought. What do you think of it? What is your thinking? And so he might say something very unpleasant or unacceptable to us sometimes. And if he feels like answering, then he's, yeah, I know it's difficult. I know it's difficult. I understand your thinking. Sometimes I also think like that. But there is another side to it. Would you like to explore that? Would you like to read that? This is usually coming from higher class students. So help them, invite them to read the book. Invite them to understand what is given in the book and come with their own answers. You need to definitely address them. It is not addressing. But addressing those questions doesn't mean you have to give solved out answers. Addressing those questions, I am telling you this from my own experience as a teenager. I have asked thousands of questions to Paulus Mar Grigorios Trimeni and Georgis Marosatios Trimeni. They have never given me any answers. They left me to find my own answers. But they asked me a lot of questions back. That's what I'm sharing with you now.
Thank you, ma'am.
If there are no more questions, or are you still thinking of questions?
Ma'am, you're being non-judgmental. Thank you for that.
Sir, I know I did not raise my hand, but it's not a question. I just want to make a confession. Ma'am, after going through this class, though I've been teaching for the past 15 years and I'm addressing class 10, teaching class 10, but absolutely, I just need to go back and view this recording every week before my class. This is the one sentence if I have to say. I have to see this presentation every week before the class. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we have a time limit. So Thomas, I think we'll then go on to the next slide. I skipped my sharing. Will you put those feedback? And I think the feedback has been sent to all of you also.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. Okay. I missed it in the last minute. 1 minute, ma'am. I'll show.
I think Leena ma'am from Saudi Arabia wants to speak, but she has a... Ma'am, you're on mute. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to share this presentation to all of us? I really think Biju from Kuwait has made a good point. Some of us probably have to put the big board in front of us, every day to see. This presentation slides are very important for us. If you can share it with us, the presentation.
Yeah.
Is that something? Yeah. Yeah.
So, ma'am, I have to confess, I just keep making that Google form. What I'll do is just give me 5 minutes. Once the meeting is over, I'll send it to the team. Okay. But meanwhile, I will.
Yeah, you can share those questions now, and they will get them as Google forms in a few minutes. So they can all answer when they get the Google form.
Yes.
Just anything, I mean, to stimulate you to say something if you want to say. You have been saying, but it's just a guidance for that.
Yeah. So what I'll do is, teachers, I will post this in the next 5 minutes once the session is over. Please take time. It's extremely critical because we also want to see there are other few slides which ma'am had prepared for basis your feedback. But then, we would want to hear from you what about.
Please put on all the questions. Just keep
so
on
did you gain
making.
anything again, Pauline? Yeah. If yes, list 1 or 2. Did you like this program? If yes, what and why? If not, what and why? If there is anything you wanted differently in this program, would you like similar sessions in future? If yes, how frequently? Okay. Thank you. They say that the pilots are pilots of flight taking off the aircraft. They get trained every 6 months. They're supposed to go to training. And when it comes to us teaching, we think that it's all done. So I think it's very important. We get into this habit of getting trained frequently. At least
Thank
the
you
Orthodox
so
Global
much.
Online Sunday School should be looking at, teachers should be looking at getting trained and getting equipped. And I think Biju sir summed it up. I think if I remember right, Biju sir has been teaching for the last 18 years. And if you could sum it up like that, I think when ma'am started it, it just went into kind of a bliss. But I think God's grace. May I request Professor Cherian Thomas to give the vote of thanks. Sir is rushing in from another meeting, but thank you, sir, for waiting.
Glory be to the triune God, respected Marina, Madam, Thomas, sir, and all others. Actually, we have attended a very fruitful session, I think. Even though my special duty is to thank Marina, Madam, the duty has been done by Leena, Biju, and Sonia, I think. Their comments were apt expressions of thanks to Marina, Madam. Actually, the details about Marina, Madam has been put in our group, so you are all familiar with those things. Actually, I have also a personal encounter with Marina, Madam, because when I was serving as the General Secretary of Orthodox Vacation Bible School before 15 years. I have used her to get an article written for for teaching in OBBS classes. So I know her from that time itself, and I heard her many appreciations about praise and laity, and so now we experienced those in our personal encounter. Actually, two things I like the most, because he said the saints living, saints departed, and saints to come. Actually, Saint Paul also is calling us saints. That is the main theme of our orthodoxy, actually. When we are teaching students, we should bear this in mind. Actually, our target, he has sang a song, that is the cream of our faith. Our target is to be like Christ. In Greek, it is called theosis. Theosis, divinization, deification. Actually, salvation in Orthodoxy means when we are deified, when we are similar to Christ, that is salvation. So our target is to grow ourselves to Christ and make our students grow to Christ. That is a very important point. Actually, that is the cream of the class, I think. So you all teachers should bear this in mind. Our target is to bring the teachers. First of all, bring ourselves to be like Christ, and then only we can bring our students to Christ. Grow like Christ. Thank you, Marina, Madam, for that expression. Another thing is the liturgy and liturgy after liturgy. That is also very, very important. The liturgy after liturgy is loving mankind, humankind. Madam said that is a point when Paulos Gregorios ceremony. Liturgy we teach students, but the very important second aspect is the liturgy after liturgy, loving of mankind. The first one is love of God. The second is love of humankind. They will go in parallel, one not important than the other. So actually, Sonia, Madam, Biju, and Rina has put the expressions of thanks very well. But on behalf of we three coordinators, Mr. Thomas, myself is Cherian Thomas, and Sherry Kudin is also from Kuwait, on behalf of us coordinators, and also on behalf of all the teachers present here. Ma'am, I am expressing our deepest thanks from our depth of our heart. We will need you more. We know that you will be ready for any help to us, this faculty. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. I also like to thank all the teachers here who participated actively in the group discussion also, and also the leaders have presented beautifully the sharing aspects of the groups. So let me express my heartfelt thanks to all those who have presented the matter, and also those teachers who have participated in the discussion.